This is not his first time. The former president has had to surrender to officials in the past. Joining me now to help break everything down is trial attorney and legal analyst Brian Claypool. Brian, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. We heard what Mr. Trump had to say to Tucker Carlson talking about the frailty of others. But first, we have learned just before former President Trump's visit to Georgia to surrender to authorities, he decided to change up his legal team. What do you make of those moves so close to today's booking, and does it mean anything?
Hey, Nick, great to be with you. Yeah, I think it is important. And I think the reason why is Mark Meadows, who you mentioned, he was Trump's former chief of staff. He has filed in federal court, Nick, a motion to have this case sent from the Fulton County State Court over to the federal court, because he's arguing, hey, I was acting as a federal official when the alleged misconduct occurred. So I am quite frankly surprised that President Trump's legal team has not done the same thing. And I think that's why there's a shakeup of his legal counsel. His counsel should be dovetailing what Meadows has done, and Trump's team should be filing a motion. Trump's even got a stronger argument. I mean, Nick, this was a federal election, right? I know Fani Willis is arguing all this alleged misconduct took place in Georgia. Therefore, it's a state court jurisdiction. But this was a federal election, which is arguably governed by federal law. So I think Trump in the near future is going to be jumping on the bandwagon with Meadows to try to get this case sent from state court to federal court.
Brian, also today, the Republicans launched an investigation into Fani Willis, the DA. How will this change the case? Can she be investigated and still prosecute Mr. Trump and his 18 co-defendants?
Yeah, I think that's a foolish move, Nick. I don't think that's a responsible move on Hutchinson's part. I think we need to let the legal process play out, and to start attacking the prosecutor for doing an investigation where it looks like there were some legitimate facts that might implicate somebody. I don't think that serves our society well. And I think another comment I wanted to make on this, Nick, is that there's an interesting issue that's going to surface down the road procedurally, and that is if this case somehow gets into federal court, will lawyers for these defendants file a motion to throw out the entire case? Because this is a state court indictment, not a federal court indictment. So there's an interesting legal issue that might surface is whether a state indictment is binding before a federal judge. So I think you're going to see that maneuver as well down the road.
Brian, I got a couple more questions for you before I let you go. This will be the fourth time the former president has surrendered to authorities. There's been some speculation about whether or not there will be a mugshot or perp walk that we see in some situations. Until now, we have not seen this yet. Could today be that day? What are your thoughts about that? And is that something the country should see?
Nick, one of your guests on a few minutes ago said it right. This is just like everybody else, right? We can't create a separate justice system for former President Trump. And ironically, that's what he and a lot of the Republicans have been arguing, right? There's been two tiers of justice. Well, when you're in state court versus federal court, you typically have to have your mugshot taken. So I don't see how he gets around that. That's part of the process. And look, Nick, I think President Trump's team needs to take a couple of these allegations seriously. For example, the allegation of creating false documents or a conspiracy to do that. There's an allegation that Trump and his team recruited people to file false electoral ballots. I mean, if there's evidence of that, that is arguably a tangible crime. I think this RICO crime, this RICO allegation, the racketeering crime, I think is more of a pretext to try to get a conviction on the lower hanging crimes. But look, there are some serious allegations, and also a conspiracy to commit forgery. That's something you can prove with tangible evidence. So I think Trump's team needs to take this seriously, but I think there's a lot of maneuvering that's left to take place, and this case isn't going to get to trial before the 2024 election.
Brian, on the topic of maneuvering, because I only have a few seconds left, what about the 19 co-defendants? Do you see someone making a deal and flipping?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nick. And I think that was a strategic move by Fani Willis. I think it was a smart move on her part. She included everybody. And by the way, she recently said too, Nick, hey, I'm trying everybody together, all 19 at the same time. And if I'm President Trump and Mark Meadows and a few others, Giuliani, I'd be a little bit concerned. For example, there's at least 3 defendants, Nick, that aren't political officials. These are 3 people I've never heard of. And I think the prosecutors are going to target those 3 to try to cop some type of plea deal, and that they're going to come forward with what could be more damaging evidence that might implicate Trump, Meadows, Giuliani, and others.
Brian Claypool, attorney and legal analyst, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Absolutely. We're tracking more.